Call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. First of all, I need a motion for adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on October 28th, 2019 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. All those in favor? And that's carried. Our first item of business this evening is the swearing in of our new youth member of council. So at this point in time, I'd ask Abby Davidson to come up to the front, and Councillor Draycott also, please. So I'm going to give you this. Thank you. Would you repeat after me? I, Abigail Davidson,
I, Abigail Davidson,
do solemnly swear
that
I will diligently execute the position of youth member of council
I will diligently execute the position of youth member of council
and will, to the best of my ability, uphold, promote, and support the ideas, activities, and the constitution of the council of the city of Portage la Prairie.
uphold, promote, and support the ideas, activities, and constitution of this council of the council of the city of Portage la Prairie.
I will serve as a positive role model, leader, and voice for the student population,
I will serve as a positive role model, leader, and voice for the student population,
and will represent the city of Portage la Prairie as well as I possibly can.
and will represent the city of Portage la Prairie as well as I possibly can.
Well, congratulations and welcome to council.
Thank you.
We have no delegations this evening, but we have a public hearing, and we'll open the public hearing for variation order PC 80-19. This is for Shea Foost at 79 13th Street Northwest. And this is Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer, please. Sorry. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Final call. Anyone here to speak to the hearing? Okay. Motion to close the hearing?
Be it resolved, and I so move that the public hearing for variation order PC 80-19, Shea Foost, 79 13th Street Northwest, now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, would you please? We have one letter of objection.
Dear Sir or Madam, I live next door to this property at 75 13th Street Northwest, and I oppose this variation order. One purpose of cities having zoning bylaws requiring structures to be specific distances apart is for community protection against fires spreading quickly from house to house. The neighbor's carport garage had been built without a variation order, having been there when I purchased my home 12 years ago. A contractor working on my home expressed concerns about the proximity of the carport to my house, and I have often been concerned that the carport or garage was built too close to my home. The distance from the old carport to my fence is a mere 41 inches. If the carport caught fire, my fence will catch fire as well, and then my house would be on fire. Having the additional 15 inches of space as required by zoning regulations between our structures provides a measure of protection against that event. The second reason I oppose the variation is the impact on aesthetics and light coming into my home. My north living room window looked out upon the roof of the carport. The old structure has needed to be reshingled since I bought my house 12 years ago. The shingles were badly deteriorated and curling. People have often commented on what an awful view I have. I have seen squirrels running on the roof, dive under a shingle, and disappear. The old structure also blocked the amount of light coming into my living room window, and I had no view of the street from the window. Now that the structure is down, significantly more light enters my home through the window, and I do have a view of the front street. If their new carport is built within the existing zoning bylaw distances, I feel that I will still get more light coming into my window and may have somewhat of a view of the street from that window. In summary, I oppose the variation based on public safety, example, a fire hazard to my home, if the variation order is granted and the new carport is again built too close to my home, and on the aesthetic impact inside my home in terms of reduction in the amount of light coming through my window, the blocking any view of the front street from my window, and of the unsightly view it creates from my window. Sincerely yours, Maggie Willman.
Thank you. Councillor Meyer?
Okay. So on behalf of the Planning and Economic Development Committee for file number PC 80-19. The issue, as we've just discussed, is the front yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 6.03 meters, and the south side requirement of 1.5 meters to be reduced to 1.12 meters. As always, our alternatives are to approve the variation or to deny the variation. Shea Foost is applying for a variation order to allow the following. I'll read it again. Front yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 6.03 meters, and south side yard requirement of 1.5 meters to be reduced to 1.12 meters. The building is in an R1 residential single-family zone. As some of the background is the applicant did have an existing open front garage, which has since been demolished, and she wishes to build a new open front garage on the same footprint as the original open front garage. The application has been circulated to various city departments with no concerns. There is a map there for your reference. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius. We have the one objection that's been noted by our Manager of Administration, Diane Van Art, and read aloud. So with that said, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Shea Foost to vary the following. Front yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 6.03 meters, and the south side requirement of 1.5 meters to be reduced to 1.12 meters. At the property known as 79 13th Street Northwest, which is legally described as lots 16 and 17, Block 1, Plan 340, in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Draycott?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question would be to Mr. Brooks. Given that we've received an objection stating concerns for safety with the distance between the two properties, is that concern your concern as well?
The building code deals with spatial separation between buildings, and I'd have to verify, but worst case scenario, she'd have to put fire-rated drywall on the inside of her garage, open front garage, and that would help alleviate the problem immensely.
And that would be in the code that she would be required to follow when building her new carport?
That's correct.
Any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Move into committees. First up is Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee, and this evening, Councillor Espy for Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item is to approve reserve funding for expenditures for the Phase 1 wastewater plant rebuild project for the low-rate anaerobic reactor, not funded by government grant funding. So the City of Portage la Prairie embarked on a project to construct and install a new LRAR at the wastewater plant in late 2017. Most of the construction was done on this project in the past 2 years, and we have switched over the operation of the former BVF to the new LRAR, which is primarily used for the pre-treatment of industrial waste. A similar portion of work remains to be completed this year. Total project government grant funding for this project is $28.75 million. Project funding requires the city to submit regular claims to the province for reimbursement. Recently, the provincial government advised some project expenditures would not qualify for grant funding. Unfortunately, this information was not available in advance of finalizing our 2019 budget and financial plan. So we are required to request a resolution from council to withdraw these funds from the nutrient removal reserve in order to have all funding in place for this year. With some expenditures outstanding, we are projecting this amount will be a maximum of $950,000. It is the administrative recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the withdrawal of up to $950,000 from the Utility Nutrient Removal Reserve in order to pay for non-government funded expenditures for the Phase 1 Wastewater Plant Rebuild Project for the low-rate anaerobic reactor. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Move into City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Once again, the planning number or the permit numbers are out for current year to date of 2019. I won't expand on those as I did talk about them in committee at the last time, but once again share my excitement in regards to the increase year over year. I do understand that it may not always be that way, but we certainly got to celebrate the moments when we have them. And that is the end of that part.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer.
Would you like me to move into the next one?
Please.
Okay. City Planning Economic Development Committee. And the issue right now, Council, is to amend the city's zoning and building bylaws. The alternatives, of course, we have in front of us are to approve the amendment process or do not approve the amendment process. Some of the background and analysis: the Portage Planning District is planning to amend and update both the city and RM of Portage's zoning and building bylaws. Zoning bylaws are being amended to ensure that they coincide with the new development plan that the Planning District recently adopted. Other required updates will be made as well. The Planning District would also like to create new building bylaws for both municipalities. The Planning District plans to hire a consultant to review and update the bylaws, and once they are in draft form, the consultant would like to meet with both councils to review the proposed amendments. The Planning District will then prepare the final bylaws for council to adopt. The Planning District will look after all costs for this process. Now, the province can provide funding up to 50% of the cost for this project, but since the zoning bylaws are owned by the respective municipalities, resolutions from both councils are required to give the Planning District authorization to secure the provincial funding. So the motion is based on two things, and it's a recommendation of this committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie authorize the Portage la Prairie Planning District to amend the City of Portage la Prairie zoning bylaw 10-8492 to ensure it coincides with the newly adopted Portage la Prairie Planning District Development Plan 02-218. And the second part is to apply for and accept any provincial funding that may be available for this project.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that's everything, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening we do have third quarter reports for Pcrc, Heritage Committee, Public Art, and the Parks Committee. These are for information only, as we did go through them last committee meeting, unless there are any questions that have come up since that I could answer for council this evening. Hearing none, I would give the Parks Committee a shout out, as there was an announcement this morning that Smile Cookie numbers did come back in from our most recent fundraising campaign with Tim Hortons. Councillor Espy, do you mind sharing that number with us? Do you have it off the top of your head?
6,382 cookies were sold.
So that is a lot of cookies, and I understand the Parks Committee continues to have that fundraiser for the next year, maybe two. And so we are looking to break that record definitely next year to go towards funding for the Parks Committee. So thank you very much, Portage la Prairie, for your support in that fundraiser, and to the Parks Committee, congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Waterworks Committee has no report this evening.
Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. In front of me, I have the quarterly reports for the bylaw enforcement as well as RCMP that were presented at last committee. You may notice that in your RCMP report that there are some updated stats in it that were just missing at the last meeting. We do have Inspector St. Pierre here tonight, which we're happy to have him around the table. And I was just hoping that maybe he could give some comments on some of what we've been talking about around our council table about the issue with making sure that our citizens are reporting things to our RCMP. So, Your Worship, if I can ask Inspector St. Pierre if you could speak on that.
Oh, there we go. Good evening. So person crimes, you'll notice that from the last quarter to this quarter, they actually decreased significantly. And when compared to the same period, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong side here. They've actually increased significantly. And property crime has actually decreased by about 10%. Attempted theft of vehicles have gone down for this quarter. Break-and enters are also down. Mischiefs are down from 169 to 134. Traffic violations are relative. Collisions are down. Motor vehicle collisions. Impaired drivers are up a little bit. Municipal bylaws are fairly relative. Same thing with federal and provincial statutes. And other criminal code are slightly up. And prisoners lodged are up about 10% as well. Common police activities have been significantly increased. Those typically are your false alarms, your suspicious persons, those type of calls. Are there any questions regarding those statistics?
Go ahead.
Inspector, earlier in the early part of the summer, there was a lot of concern in the community over property crimes, and I understand the RCMP made some arrests regarding liquor thefts recently. Is there anything else you'd attribute the drop in property crimes to?
Some of the work we've done this year with regards to our offender management program has been fairly successful as far as targeting the few amount of the population that contribute to the largest number of property and crimes. We made it a priority this spring to put them on our, for lack of better words, offender management program. And we were able to arrest many of them right off the hop. So as a result of that, that helped decrease their activity in the community.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. As disturbed as I am by any numbers, and I understand we'll certainly never get to zero by any way, but the one that really kind of maybe bothers me maybe the most of all these is really the impaired increase. With all the education and so on going out, do you feel that that's an actual increase in impaired driver, or do you feel maybe it's the enforcement that maybe comes along with maybe the new laws? And then part two to that is, do you find a larger separation between alcohol impaired and cannabis impaired?
The cannabis impaired driving, we're not seeing a lot of yet. A lot of people are using good judgment, but then there's a side component to that too, where we have more and more officers getting trained in standard field sobriety testing, which does detect impaired driving by drugs as well as alcohol. Having said that, not all of our officers are trained in that yet. We had a goal for the province, all the RCMP officers in the province last year, of getting up to 33% of our frontline staff trained in SFST. So we're doing well on that front, but we have room to definitely do more. That cannabis law was more or less pushed through fairly quickly, and by the time it was enacted and brought to speed, it took some time and funding from the federal and provincial governments to actually catch up with the the instruments and the training components to that. With regards to these specific numbers, they're actually down from, say, the quarter, like the first quarter, and just up from the second. So they're more or less relative, and that can be simply just luck of the draw, so to speak, because they are relative. The increase of 6 impaired drivers isn't overly significant. Our goal through our annual performance plan for traffic safety is we shoot to arrest and charge 100 per year. So when we look at that, we're on track for that number. But again, that if we weren't out on the road patrolling and responding to some of these erratic drivers, our numbers would be way low. But because we are out there, our numbers are on track for our goal of making sure we optimize and mitigate the amount of optimize the officers and mitigate the amount of impaired drivers on the road.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So Inspector St. Pierre, what would you say we've seen in our community a real pop-up of some of our social media sites, and we see our citizens maybe choosing to report to social media rather than report to the police. And we know we're giving the message of to report. What can you say on that?
Reporting of crimes occurring in general are generally underreported from a global perspective. A lot of people feel that they're being a nuisance. They don't, the police are too busy for that, dealing with real crimes, in quotations. But the reality of it is that policing resources are driven by statistics. And so even though the information we receive from the public may or may not be usable, it still reflects a statistic. If we can use it, often it's the missing piece of the puzzle for a number of other crimes that have occurred. So at least reporting it to us, we'll have the information, and from that information, our analysts can glean patterns and of behavior or crimes themselves. And from that, we can link and often solve crimes based on that linkage. So it's important that that all constituents, all the public in general at large, and those traveling through, report to the police, because we can't do anything about it if we don't know about it. And that would help us as far as getting more numbers and at least retaining the number of officers we have for future planning.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that is because I have been hearing it in the public of people not calling in crimes and just saying that it's so important because it can link to other crimes that are happening. So yes, although some of our social media is a great way to get information out there, your first line needs to be reporting to our RCMP, calling 911 or calling our non-emergent line and getting that information in there. So thank you. If nothing else, that so ends my report.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. We have no deferred business this evening. However, we do have some new business. First up is the Parade of Lights road closure, and this is Transportation Committee. Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Chamber of Commerce has once again requested road closures for Santa's Parade of Lights, which takes place on Friday, December the 6th, 2019. In 2017, a new staging location was used with floats gathering at Stride Place parking lot, then heading over the causeway, turning west down Crescent Road, then north on 20th Street Southwest. The parade began on Saskatchewan Avenue at 20th Street, heading east to 9th Street Southeast. This proved to be a successful route with no known issues, and the Chambers requested the same route this year. The route will be closed to traffic beginning at 7 p.m. and will reopen behind the parade as it proceeds. The westbound lanes of Saskatchewan Avenue will also be closed for the convenience and safety of spectators. A detour route will be provided as follows: north on 10th Street Northeast, west on Lorne Avenue to McKay Avenue to 18th Street, then Giggett Avenue to 21st Street Northwest, then south to Saskatchewan Avenue. RCMP will control the traffic at intersecting streets along the parade route. It is the administrative recommendation that the council authorize the closure of Crescent Road West, 20th Street Southwest, and Saskatchewan Avenue in both directions between 21st Street Northwest and 10th Street Northeast for the annual Santa's Parade of Lights on the evening of Friday, December the 6th, 2019, beginning at 7 p.m., moving from west to east until the end of the parade, and that the Chamber of Commerce parade organizers coordinate the road closure with Manitoba Infrastructure and Transportation, the RCMP, and the City Operations Department, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Draycott?
Perhaps just a statement and then a question. Statement would be last year there were concerns from, I believe, the chamber themselves for people being on the Crescent, trying to catch the parade before it actually went to the parade route. I think we should note that the parade route is not the Crescent. That is the route that the floats are taking, but the parade starts when it hits Saskatchewan Avenue. That's when floats slow down. That's when people start walking. So it's important for the public not to sit on the Crescent in order to catch the parade before it actually starts. And I guess my question would be, are there any concerns with the current construction we have in the area of Stride Place right now? Will that be kind of at a standstill at that point, or given that the whole road is closed and then it ends before it gets back to Stride? Is there a concern there, or are we okay with this path still this year?
I do know I'd asked about the detour that's in place east of the causeway construction. That will still be in place as of probably, which actually makes it a little simpler. You're only dealing with traffic the one way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's any other changes in the construction schedule.
I can maybe speak to that as well, as I'm actually marshalling the parade with the volunteers from Rotary, and we do expect it to be similar to what it was last year. We have talked with operations. There haven't been really any concerns keeping people straight to where they need to go. We did check with Stride Place. There are very few events going on that night, so there won't be a lot of intersecting traffic as well. And at this point in time, we have no concerns, other than we will meet with operations one more time and the Chamber and Rotary as well.
Any further questions on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. The next item is also Councillor Espy's. This is under Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one is regarding council meeting schedule for 2020. Council meetings are generally held on the second and fourth Monday of each month. Each council passes a resolution to set the schedule for the following year. Council meetings are scheduled to begin at 6 p.m. In accordance with the Municipal Act and the City of Portage la Prairie Procedure Bylaw, council may change a council meeting date if necessary and advertise accordingly. In proposing the 2020 schedule, consideration was given to the MMAA Annual Conference, April 26th to April 29th, 2020, the FCM Annual Conference, June 4th to June 7th, 2020, the Annual Convention of the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, November 23rd to 25th, 2020, a short summer recess from City Council meetings, one meeting in July and one in August, the dates that statutory holidays are observed by City Council and Administration. It is the administrative recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the council meeting dates for 2020 as presented in the report.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? And that's carried. And the next item of new business is Principal Logistics, Inc. and Cobb's Plumbing and Heating, and this is City Planning and Economic Development. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, the issue in front of you is to consideration of the application to amend property lines between three titles to create 2 lots. Alternatives, of course, to approve the application or to amend the proposed plan of subdivision or to deny the application. Bit of the background is the applicant proposes to amend the property lines between 3 titles to create 2 lots that can be fenced. This will also correct for an encroachment. The lots are serviced by municipal sewer and individual wells. Access to both lots is provided by PTH 1A, Saskatchewan Avenue East, and the proposal is Lot 1 equals 0.87 acres and Lot 2 is 1.79 acres. Policy 4.4.3.2 of the development plan states that Saskatchewan Avenue represents the main entrance into the city of Portage la Prairie. Development will be encouraged to consider how this role can be used to create a sense of arrival and convey positive and vibrant images of the city to visitors and residents. In support of this policy, 4.4.3.1 states that the zoning bylaw may consider urban design standards considered to ensure an attractive and competitive environment for future developments. The proposal does generally comply with the development plan. Zoning bylaw, number 10-8492 or C3 Commercial Avenue Zone. The minimum site area is 460 meters and the minimum site width is 15.2 meters. That said, the proposed and residual lots comply with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. There are some comments noted. There's also a subdivision plan and a site plan there for your reference. Comments, of course, from infrastructure is just recommends that the city contact the department's technical services engineer to determine if the proposal will affect PTH 1A. And that, of course, will include the access, drainage, maintenance, etc. Manitoba Hydro, of course, requires usual easements. WLTO requires a 2-lot plan of subdivision. And there is a broke down diagram of the subdivision there as well. All other departments, agencies had no concerns. The Community and Regional Planning recommends approval of the subdivision. So, that said, it's a recommendation of this committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the subdivision of a portion of River Lot 70 and Lot 1, Plan 2080 and River Lot 118 in the parish of Portage la Prairie to amend property lines to create 2 lots.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that's the end of my report.
Thank
New
you,
business.
Councillor Meyer. The final item of new business is the 2019 quarter third financial statements. It's Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The city's fiscal year is the calendar year with 3 quarters being March 31st, June 30th, September 30th, and December 31st year end. Administration provides detailed financial statements to the City Council on a quarterly basis. This process excludes quarter 1 as the prior year's financial results are being finalized in this time frame, and the annual budget, including the year's financial plan, is not finalized until May. The city's finance department uses a team approach to meet and review individually with all directors, managers, and supervisors responsible for financial results in their own areas to determine any variances or significant budget gaps. On non-quarter months, July through November, the city's cumulative statement of financial position and statement of operations reports for the city's general and utility funds are provided on a summary basis for council approval. Projections. With 3 months remaining in the year, department directors, managers, and supervisors, as applicable, provided projected year-end balances. The general fund is projected to end the year at $265,000 in lower expenses than budgeted, which is primarily due to higher interest earnings on the city's financial institution accounts at a more favorable interest rate than expected. Utility fund is also projecting lower expenses than budgeted to end the year by $257,000, which is primarily due to lower chemical usage than expected for water treatment and staff vacancies. Any variances to budget will be offset by contributions to reserve accounts for future use. The city general capital assets total over $225 million and $370 million for the utility capital assets. Reserves are used to save for the repair, enhancement, and replacement of those assets, as well as the demand of additional capital assets. So it is the administrative recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the Quarter 3 2019 financial statements, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We have no old business this evening, so council is adjourned at 6:35 PM, and we're going to move right into committee. We'll call committee to order at 6:35 PM, and first up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. There'll be one item coming forward at the next council meeting, and it's the 2020 fees and charges. Annual review and update for the city's fees and charges. And there is some information there for council's perusal, and this will be coming forward for a vote at the next council meeting.
Any questions for Councillor Espy? Okay.
Concludes
City
my
Planning and
report.
Economic Development, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Of course, Council, coming up at next council meeting, we will have the lease agreements for the billboards that you'll show up on traveling east or traveling west on number 1, which primarily are tourism billboards. The leases have been in place for the last 10 years, and this will be an extension of them. So something for your perusal there if there's any questions. Seeing none, that is the end of my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening, we do have a presentation of Climate Change Local Action Plan by EcoWest. I would like to call, I don't want to butcher your names too badly, but Mr. Boisjoli and Robideau up to the podium to give us a brief presentation, please.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm Aimé Boisjoli. It's nice to meet all of you. This is Danny. I'm the Director of Operations at EcoWest Canada, and Danny is the Executive Director at EcoWest Canada. We've been working with the City of Portage la Prairie for a little while, but just in case I think there are new faces around the table, EcoWest Canada is a national nonprofit organization based in Winnipeg that has the mission to assist Canadian municipalities in developing a local economy that is both ecologically and economically sustainable. Am I close enough to the mic? Is that okay? Yeah. We are also the FCM's regional climate advisor.
Just a little bit louder, and
Oh.
that'll come up a
I
bit.
don't get told that very often, to be honest. I can. There we go. How's that?
That's better.
So as I was saying, we're also the FCM's regional climate advisor for Manitoba and Saskatchewan and have been for the last 2 years. So essentially what we do is we create greenhouse gas emissions inventories. We help set reduction targets for those emissions. We create climate change local action plans, which is what we've been doing with you. We facilitate feasibility studies, project development, and implementation of certain initiatives, which we'll talk about near the end of the presentation. We monitor progress and reporting results, as well as we work on possible commercialization of new green, clean technologies that are usually effective in municipal markets. The FCM has a program called the Partners for Climate Protection program, which you are a member. The city of Portage la Prairie signed up in September 2017, I believe. The program is essentially a framework to start looking at greenhouse gas reduction. And so essentially there's 5 milestones, which is you create that baseline, which is the greenhouse gas inventory, which was done actually before you joined the PCP program. You created a greenhouse gas inventory in 2016. You then set reduction targets. That's milestone 2. There's kind of a standard reduction target of 20% for corporate emissions and 6% globally for the community as part of the program. That's kind of the minimum, if you will. You create a climate change local action plan, which is what we've just submitted to you last week. Then you implement initiatives based out of the local action plan, and we can talk about what that means. And then you monitor progress and report results. All this typically is done through about a 10-year span. I was asked to go over the process and timeline for this climate change local action plan that we've done with you. So as I mentioned, in September 2017, you joined the PCP program officially. In June 2018, an engagement letter was signed with Eco West Canada to create the climate change local action plan. From there, we did a review of the greenhouse gas emissions inventory that was done the year before, or 2 years before. In January 2019, we did a council and staff survey, which hopefully most of the people around the table filled out, those that were there. In February 2019, we submitted a first draft. We had a face-to-face meeting with staff, with Diane and Nathan, yes, in February 2019. We then allowed some time for staff to review. Oh yeah, thank you. Sorry, I took for granted that everybody had it on their screen at the same time. There was a second review and finally a final review that happened between the months of July and October to come out with the version that we submitted, which I believe is in your package. Certain things we found from the greenhouse gas inventory that was done in 2016, just certain things I wanted to point out. Essentially in your corporate, that just doesn't work, does it? In your corporate profile, you'll notice the largest emitter in your corporate profile is the water and sewage. That creates your most greenhouse gas emissions. And for the community as a whole, it's your industrial sector that's actually emitting the most, which speaks to a healthy industrial sector. The downside is more emissions. And finally, looking at your annual waste production per capita, the city of Portage la Prairie has a significant amount of waste based on the 2015 year. Again, that includes all the industrial waste. And as I understand it, since 2015, there have been initiatives to reduce, to divert organics from the waste stream. The document we submitted has recommendations. That's the crux of the document, if you will. Each goal is supplemented with a set of objectives, and each objective has a set of actions that can be implemented. But globally, the goals are to sustainably manage your potable water and as well as your wastewater, to improve your air quality, to reduce your community waste, reduce energy consumption, to grow the city of Portage la Prairie in a sustainable way, and to increase climate change awareness overall. One thing I wanted to highlight is that this document is what you'd consider to be a living document. It can be amended, it can be modified, especially in the area of climate change study. There's a lot of new information that comes out every once in a while, so there are certain considerations that maybe in a few years you don't have now, but you will have then. And modifying the document potentially could help access extra funding along the way. Next steps. So the next step is we hope that you pass a resolution next meeting and send that resolution to the FCM adopting the Climate Change Local Action Plan. One thing I wanted to mention, we looked on the FCM website, and as I mentioned, you joined the Partners for Climate Protection program back in 2016 or in 2017, and before that, you had created the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. Like I mentioned earlier, that's milestone 1, but it was never sent to the FCM to get that milestone 1 recognition. And so I did submit earlier what a resolution could look like. I would appreciate having the chance to modify that resolution to allow you to just include that section in it, so that when you send in a complete resolution or a set of resolutions, you would have a recognition for milestones 1, 2, and 3, I would hope, if that makes sense to everybody. Again, going with the 20% reduction for corporate emissions and 6% for community, and understanding at the same time, and not that I say you shouldn't take that to heart, but these are non-binding targets. So if you don't meet them, not that you wouldn't want to, there's no penalty for not meeting it. And finally, we would hope that you'd want to implement initiatives that are in the plan. Again, the plan is written in a way that there's a lot of flexibility in how we mark down the actions. That was done on purpose so that if certain things come along the way, for example, phase 2 of a wastewater facility along the way, there are ways to kind of still make that fit so that you can hopefully qualify for funding if you're interested. Now we put down some numbers that come from the FCM's Green Municipal Fund. So for feasibility studies, they will contribute up to $175,000 at 50% of eligible costs. For pilot projects that are eligible, they will supply up to 50%. For 50% or 80% of eligible costs, depending on the size of the community, the population size, which is, I think, for anything under 20,000 population size, you qualify for up to 80% at 175,000. At 500,000, pardon me. And finally, there's capital project funding as well that can be $5 to $10 million loan with a 15% grant included in the amount. And that is it for me right now. We are more than happy to answer questions, however.
Councillor Wall.
Yes, Worship, through you to our guests. If during our nutrient removal, which is coming up, it could be in excess of $100 million project, and part of that project will be utilizing biogas from the low-rate anaerobic reactor to generate electricity on site. But is that actually reducing emissions when we quit using hydro and instead use the biogas? We're not flaring the biogas, we're now using it for electricity, but it's still there.
There are some technicalities involved in that. In essence, if you're not burning a fossil fuel, then yes, you are reducing emissions.
No, we're burning biogas created by the digestion of organic materials in the digester.
Right. So there are some who are better versed than I am in that process. My understanding is that you are reducing the methane that would be produced and using it as a fuel source. Therefore, it can be at some level considered carbon neutral.
Thank you.
Suggestions reducing garbage going to landfill. So I saw the reports on composting. Were there other suggestions, or was it limited to composting?
In your plan specifically, I'm really sorry. I don't have the entirety of the recommendations or the detail of the recommendations entirely in mind. But
a lot of initiatives. So organics diversion falls within the province of Manitoba's Climate and Green Plan, is as one initiative that, as an initiative that is supported by the province of Manitoba. But there are a lot of other opportunities to look at how you can divert waste, whether it be how to recycle plastics in such a way that can be used in alternative methods. And then there's also possibly using waste to energy technologies. So similar to what you're doing with the anaerobic digester, looking at how waste can be used to generate energy. We are working on an initiative, or we've been supporting an initiative in the area of Minidosa and Minto-Adana around gasification of waste. The way that the plan has been structured is such that if such initiatives are of interest to you, then it could be included, or those initiatives could be studied closer, and access to FCM funding could be used in order to finance those studies and pilot projects.
Okay. Are there any initiatives you know of to reduce the overpackaging that a lot of our citizens, consumers are dealing with? Like there's a lot of our citizens try to recycle, they try to reduce, but the packaging is way overdone in some cases.
I was told at the grocery store the other day that as of January, there'll be no more plastic bags at Sobeys, so.
Yeah, the
Somebody's
bags
trying.
are all looked after, but the, a lot of other things that are,
The actual packaging is an issue. It's an issue at the manufacturing front, right? So it's working with producers and manufacturers as to how to package things in such a way that, you know, we do reduce our waste. That is a challenge. Having sat on some task force, provincial task force, to look at that specific area, it is a challenge as to how do you get manufacturers to reduce their packaging. Consumers can vote with their wallets. One of the things that is also encouraged sometimes in terms of if you are going to the grocery stores is actually saying, rather than packaging all your oranges and apples and whatnot, produce in individual use plastic bags, it's not packaging them in plastic bags at all and just bringing them loose at the cash, bringing your own bags in order to take them home, and asking the stores, hey, is there a way that we can reduce the use of these packagings? It's by asking that we may be able to start moving the yardsticks forward, but it's not an easy solution. There are various considerations when it comes to packaging, whether it be for shipping or to reduce theft, etc. So it is a challenge, though.
Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the steps outlined is to assist local businesses and residents with building retrofits, grants, emission reduction plans. I know a lot of people, homeowners and businesses, don't necessarily know where to go to start on how they can change what their houses and buildings look like, little things that they can do to assist the city and the world in this issue. Is there a good place that we can direct people or have information available through our website or something of the such to give people a good place to go to get ideas on what you can do personally?
There are, and I think that there are opportunities that are coming down the pipe in terms of what the city could do to provide opportunities to its residents. The FCM is coming out with some new programs around energy retrofits for households. PACE type system, so in terms of providing a loan to homeowners in order to retrofit their houses to use potentially solar panel as an energy source for their homes, and they're able to pay off that loan from the savings, their energy consumption savings. It's a program that the FCM is currently developing and will be rolling out shortly. That will be available to municipalities who want to be able to push that out to their residents and their communities. Also, anything around affordable housing and retrofitting affordable housing in such a manner, as well as this similar type. There are programs in the pipes right now from the FCM that could be quite beneficial to residents in the future. But in terms of specifics, where you can actually direct, we have to look into it and get back to you.
There's still efficiency management is still running the old PowerSmart programs.
Yes, they are.
Right. So that's still an opportunity that a lot of homeowners can access.
Yes, you can get free insulation from Manitoba Hydro. Sometimes they do energy surveys on homes. Very good deals on financing high energy efficient furnaces and so on.
Yeah, for mainly low-income households.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The challenge there would be that because of Efficiency Manitoba coming into the fold, there is some uncertainty as to who holds what and how the programs are going to be rolled out. So time will tell, though.
Any other questions from council for our presenters? Okay, well, I want to thank both of you for taking time out and coming out and presenting to us this evening. As you can tell, there's a lot of interest from council, and I think a lot of interest from our community in this subject. So, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. This evening, we do also have a presentation from Mary Lawrence for Pcrc Hub.
Hi, my name's Mary Lawrence. I was recently hired as the Portage la Prairie Hub Coordinator when we received funding this year. So the Portage Hub has seen a lot of success in the past 18 months. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Mary.
No, it's okay. Just eager from waiting so long. So in the past 18 months, we received 150 referrals, 124 of which we accepted, and 69 of those were connected to services, with 10 informed of services additionally. We've seen an increase of collaboration between agencies due to Hub outside of the Hub table and calling when they want to connect other clients to other services. We've also reached a lot of high-risk clients in our community, and we've been able to track some data around risk factors in our local demographics. So our top risk factors have stayed relatively the same over the past 18 months, with mental health being the top one, and then drugs, basic needs, criminal involvement, and parenting and housing have kind of flip-flopped for the 5th place. For referral demographics, we've had 52 families accepted, and our greatest demographic for individuals referred were ages 16 to 24 with 33 referrals. So with the Hub model, we did see some challenges that we spent a lot of time trying to overcome, which included having no long-term data, which is the model that we went with because we didn't have funding for a full-time position, so we weren't able to track that. And it wasn't consent-based, so it was only acutely elevated risk clients, so we did not have to have their permission to bring them forward to Hub. And 2 meetings a week were an issue for some agencies, as it was a huge time commitment for staff. And we didn't have a full-time staff coordinator, so that also posed some issues. So our solution, which we spent a lot of time considering over this summer, was to change our model to a consent-based and model after the Thunderwing project in Winnipeg in the North End. So they have strong long-term data. They've been in operation for 5 years. They originally were going to start as a Hub program, but then their community were hesitant because it was not consent-based. So they made some changes and came up with the Thunderwing model. So it coordinates and mobilizes existing services to permanently stabilize clients, and it builds capacity and collaboration between families, service providers, and the community. So the Thunderwing model is slightly different than the Hub model. The referral will come directly to me, which I will then assess and discuss with the agency that has referred. And then myself, the referring agency, and the family or individual will meet and discuss what's going on with that client. From that point, they will sign a consent and they will be brought forward to our table, which for the purpose of this, I will still call the Hub table, but we will be renaming. So from there, at the Hub table, we'll discuss what services need to be mobilized and who should be on their support team. So their support team will then meet once a month, approximately for up to a year, to support them in accessing what they need and building supports to access after that 1 year. So after that, we will continue to do follow-up through that year and track systemic issues that clients face, which will then be brought forward to our systems leadership table to be addressed. So the Thunderwing outcomes are quite strong. They had 53 adults obtain or maintain housing over the past 5 years. They've had 40 individuals with a reduction of police calls, and 42 adults obtained or maintained healthcare services. So that results in a lot of cost savings. they had a social return of investment done, and for every dollar invested, they received $5 in savings, which some studies say that a return of service of $2 for every $1 invested is strong, so this is very strong. And 31 children were returned home from CFS care, and 48 children with open protection files stayed with their parents. And they saw 70 adults connected to new resources. Any questions about our new model?
Councillor Draycott?
Thank you, Worship. So have you started the Thunderwing model at this point in time? When are you starting? Or
So our first meeting takes place on October 27th, and our last November 27th, sorry. And our last hub meeting took place on October 31st.
And the new model will have the same agency, same members?
Yes. We have seen increased participation for some agencies because it is consent-based.
Okay, good.
Your Worship.
Councillor Knox?
I'm more of a comment just because I sit on the systems leadership and understand what's happening here is I think it's important for the comment of the fact that these agencies are committed to making this work in our community by reviewing and saying what we were doing wasn't working because we weren't getting the buy-in from all the agencies that we wanted for it to be successful. So I congratulate Pcrc and all the other agencies that work so hard to make this happen, and congratulate you, Mary, on being the new hub
Thank you.
consistent person, and I just think we're going to see some success in our community, so congratulations.
Thank you. I think another important thing to be noted is that we potentially will see less clients per year, but we'll be working with those clients more effectively long term. And we'll be able to track long-term data, which is important.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. I don't have anything officially to add to Community Services Committee, but given that it's Ms. Davidson's first committee meeting, I thought I would give her the floor for a moment if she has anything she'd like to share with us. I know you won't have any plans of what you're anticipating to do most likely yet, but if you have any words that you'd like to say or any update on what's happening at the high school or anything like that, the floor is yours for a moment.
No updates, but I'd like to thank, I'd like to thank the council for the warm welcome, and I'm super honored to be here.
Well, I can tell you council is very excited to have you sitting at our table this year, and we are looking forward to the things that you are going to do. And that concludes Community Services Committee report this evening, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Waterworks Committee has nothing to report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
And Councillor Knox, the Public Safety Committee. Anything further?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We do actually have a Bear Clan announcement tonight, and I would like to, through you, ask Mrs. Espy from Pcrc to speak on that.
Okay. Mrs. Espy?
Thank you, Councillor Knox. Good evening. I am very pleased to announce that Pcrc, in partnership with the Portage RCMP detachment, submitted an application on behalf of the Portage Bear Clan for funding through the Criminal Forfeiture Fund. And we received our official notice that the Portage Bear Clan is going to receive $31,115 to start our local chapter. So they are very excited, and we are very excited, and we'd like to thank the Portage RCMP for putting forward the application on Pcrc's behalf and the Bear Clan's behalf.
Thank you. And I'll reiterate that. So thank you to our local RCMP for putting in that work, and congratulations to the Bear Clan. And that so ends my report for this evening.
Okay, well, I have one quick question for you or Mrs. Espy. Lots of interest in the community, a lot of talk about Bear Clan. Do we have some revised timelines now?
So they'll be able to start training right away, and I think they've already set up first aid, mental health first aid, and nonviolent crisis intervention for this month. And they've got their leadership table established, and I'm pretty sure they have patrol leaders in place. So I'm hopeful that in the next couple months, patrols will begin.
Okay, great news. Thank you.
And I guess just on that note, for public information, when we do start patrols, that will be very much announced in the community. So until then, until you hear it and you see it, there is no Bear Clan patrols happening out there right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
None. So committee is adjourned at 7:05 p.m. and we have a very short organizational meeting. We call the organizational meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. Yes, please.
First item is the appointment of deputy mayor. Resolved that in accordance with Section 148(2) of the Municipal Act, Councillor Brant Budds be appointed deputy mayor from November 12th, 2019 to the next organizational meeting of council.
Need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Appointment of acting deputy mayor. Resolved that the following be appointed acting deputy mayor from November 12th, 2019 to the next organizational meeting of council. November and December, Councillor Espy. January and February, Councillor Knox. March and April, Councillor Meyer. May and June, Councillor Wall. July and August, Councillor Draycott. And September and October, Councillor Espy.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Espy, seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Appointment of standing committees. Resolve that appointments to standing committees be approved as follows. Finance, Legislative and Property Committee, Councillors Budds and Espy. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillors Meyer and Budds. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott and Knox. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall and Draycott. Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy and Meyer. Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox and Wall.
And again, could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Appointment of special committees. Resolve that the following appointments to special committees be approved. Budget Committee, Mayor and Council. City Managers Evaluation Committee, Mayor and Council. Emergency Control Group, Mayor and Council. Board of Revision, Mayor and Council. Chair of Board of Revision is the Mayor. Secretary of the Board of Revision, Manager of Administration. And the Tax Sharing Committee is Mayor and Council.
And moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Appointment of ad hoc committees. Resolve that the following appointments to ad hoc committees be approved. Chamber of Commerce and Positively Portage Observer, Councillor Meyer. Portage Regional Recreation Authority, Mayor Ferris, Councillor Budds. Councillor Espy, and citizen appointment James Bolton. Portage Regional Economic Development, Councillor Buds, Councillor Draycott, Councillor Meyer, and ex officio city manager. Heartland Community Futures, Councillor Meyer, and citizen appointment Liz Dreger. Regional Library Board, Councillor Wall, Evelyn Braun, and James Kostachuk. Portage and District Hospital Foundation, Mayor Ferris, Lynn Bariza, and Dale Lyle. Queen Elizabeth Scholarship, Mayor Ferris, PCI Principal, and West Park School Principal. Heritage Advisory Committee, Councillor Wall, James Kostachuk, Brian Barrett, Derek McCutcheon, and Greg Roberts. The RCMP Community Consultative Committee, Councillor Knox and Councillor Wall. Planning District Board, Mayor Ferris, Councillor Buds, and Councillor Espy. Regional Landfill Board, Councillor Wall, Councillor Knox, and Councillor Meyer. Dangerous Animal Hearing Committee, Fire Chief, City Manager, and a veterinarian to be consulted if required. Fort Lorraine Museum Board, Councillor Draycott. Public Art Committee, Councillor Meyer, Roberta Christensen, Carol Lepkowski, Victoria Espy, Margaret Bernhard Loudon, and Cindy McDonald. Parks Committee, Councillor Draycott, Councillor Espy, Steve Hildebrand, Gord Zacharias, Diane Stasiak, Lynn Parker, Angie Schindel, and Vienna Muse.
You have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor? And that's carried. The organizational meeting is adjourned at 7:11 p.m. Thank you, everybody.